Okay. Good day, everyone, my dear colleagues, co-learners, and of course, our esteemed faculty in the UP CEFAL, and our teaching assistants, and of course, the audience and the participants. We now give the floor to Dr. Michelle R. Palumbarit, the Director of UP CEFAL. Please, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Greetings, everyone. It's a precious opportunity to welcome you all to this webinar on migrant repatriation. I commend the PCGM Batch 6 in organizing this interesting and timely webinar on migration, repatriation, and of course, Lebanon. To all our attendees and to all our speakers, I wish you a productive and meaningful discussion. A pleasant day to all of us, and again, welcome. Back to you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Palumbarit, for that encouraging words for the first group who is about to present, as you have stated, the topic on migrant repatriation, challenges and opportunities. And of course, the group is composed of the learners who are on the first card. The presentation will actually focus on three subtopics. Number one is social protection for moving migrants in conflict zones, in this case, Lebanon. Number two would be cross-border collaboration to facilitate movement of migrants affected by conflict. And number three would be strategic tools and recommendations. On the strategic tools and recommendations, we request the audience and the co-learners to kindly take note of your recommendations so that it will be more interactive in the end. So anyhow, the idea why we came up with the topic on repatriation is that the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, which operates in Lebanon, escalated dramatically in 2024 following the assassination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in September 2024. This intensified the hostilities on both sides. However, rising tensions along the Israel-Lebanon border had already been observed since 2023, fueled by broader regional dynamics such as Israel's confrontation with Hamas, which is on the southern part, and Iran's growing influence in supporting Hezbollah. In response to this escalating tension, the Philippine government raised its alert level for Lebanon from alert level 2, which is restricted phase, to alert level 3, or voluntary repatriation, which we are doing now. It was raised in October 2023. We initiated efforts to facilitate the safe return of Filipino nationals to the Philippines. The Philippines has an estimated 17,000 Filipinos in Lebanon and a little over 30,000 in Israel. With the safety and security of its citizens abroad paramount, the Philippines often conducts repatriation operations in collaboration with other countries and or various international organizations. So if you will recall, what is happening in Lebanon is not only current. It happened in 2006 or 2006, where we have repatriated many Filipinos as well. So in an era marked by complex migration flows and conflict-driven displacement, building resilience has become essential for migrants and the communities they settle in or return to. Social protection, repatriation, and reintegration strategies are critical tools in supporting migrant rights, safety, and long-term stability. This webinar will explore comprehensive approaches to managing migration in crisis settings and examine the current experience in Lebanon, focusing on policies and practices that prioritize protection, inclusion, and resilience. Through cross-sectoral insights, we encourage you to find some points or learn something about practical frameworks and innovations in crisis response and repatriation for migrants affected by conflict. So next, please. So for you to be able to appreciate Lebanon, we have to view first. Let's go back to the first slide, the Lebanon map. The Lebanon map, please, so that the audience can. This is Lebanon, okay? To the north would be Lebanon, and south would be Israel, and Israel has its own conflict with Hamas. Lebanon, where we are focusing the discussion, where Hezbollah is based, okay? So for the three topics, subtopics, the first one will be presented by Attorney Catherine Jade David, and who is a lawyer at the Department of Migrant Workers, and Miss Jessalyn Galvinito, who has actually first-hand experience being assigned in Lebanon at the Migrant Workers Office in Beirut. Miss Catherine, please.
Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Catherine J. David from the Department of Migrant Worker, the primary agency in the Philippines tasked to protect the rights and promote the welfares of OFWs. I will briefly discuss existing social protection programs to which migrants have access to, which should allow us, and especially the participants, to assess where we need to bridge the gap by the end of this webinar. So, as mentioned by Lava Talangam, migration crisis describes a complex and large-scale migration flow and mobility pattern caused by a crisis. This often affects vulnerable sectors, which generate acute and long-term migration management challenges, which raise concerns on challenges to the achievement of durable solutions, specific protection needs of displaced population, including relocation and integration into local communities, its impact on the local communities accommodating the sudden or large influx of displaced or returning populations, disruption on the usual routes or seasonal labor cycles, and of course, we cannot forget the potential increase of the rate of exploitation and trafficking. Now, this is where social protection comes in. So social protection constitutes of policies and programs designed to reduce poverty and vulnerability by promoting efficient labor markets, diminishing people's exposure to risk, and enhancing their capacity to protect themselves against hazards or loss of income. So it also includes social economic, social health, and legal assistance and capacity building programs. So for us to easier remember what social protection is for, first, it helps people prepare for crisis. It helps reduce the effects of crisis. Third, it helps people recover from crisis and help people build resilience. So again, we have preparation, reduction, recovery, and building resilience, especially on the vulnerable sector as it acts as a safety net for migrants. Second slide, please. On the second slide, we will see there welfare and protection services provided to migrants in conflict zones, which include counseling services, psychological first aid to reduce the occurrence of post-traumatic stress disorder. Third, psychosocial processing. This is a method to allow migrants to vet their emotions on their traumatic experience and help them undergo the process towards healing and recovery. Psychosocial processing also provides education and information about the current anticipated stress response, as well as stress management and contingency planning. Fourth, we have the critical incident stress management, similar to counseling services. This is a group processing to reduce PTSD. And fifth, we have psychosocial recovery and resiliency service. Next slide, please. Another aspect of social protection or support services, which should include medical assistance if deemed necessary, material assistance, which should also include provisions of clothing, blankets, luggages, kitchen supplies, hygiene kits, and especially food. We have to remember that our migrants who are displaced often have nothing to go with them. Third, we have communication assistance. This is provided through the provision of cell cards or free phone calls to reach their next of kin. And fourth, we have also provide temporary shelters. This is also common with migrant workers' offices abroad. Next slide, please. As practiced now with our OFWs in Lebanon, so far, there is almost hundreds of OFWs who have been repatriated to the Philippines. And the processes include issuance or processing of travel-related documents, which should include birth registrations for children born abroad and immigration exit passes. Also includes provisions for plane tickets or provisions for sea travel and until they reach their communities here in the Philippines. It also includes coordination with receiving entities and next of kin in the Philippines. So that means it is an interagency cooperation and coordination here. Next slide, please. And finally, the financial assistance granted to our distressed or displaced migrants due to war or political unrest. One of the biggest funds that the Philippines provides for our OFWs is called Agarang Kalinga at Saklolo para sa mga OFW na nangangailangan or Action Fund that provides financial assistance to OFWs who are in crisis situations and in need of special protection. This means it is specially provided for victims of trafficking, illegal recruitment, abuse and exploitation, maltreatment by employers, and even human-induced and natural disasters. This should also include severe mental health conditions and also provide them with economic support programs such as the initial business capital. So, as you can see by the end of this slide, uh, social protection covers a lot of aspects of the lives of our migrants. This is to promote the welfare, the overall welfare of the OFW, not just in terms of job employment and not just in terms of the safety of their family, but also to be holistic in the approach and also to involve multi-stakeholders at different levels, not just in uh, global migration, but also down to the national and local government. Now, to discuss more on the situation of our migrants in Lebanon, please watch this video of Ms. Jessa Galenito. Um, Also, please allow me to take this opportunity to warn our participants that the following footage contains graphic images of war, violence, and traumatic scenes. Viewer discretion is advised. Please play the video. Thank you.
Magandang araw, good day to all our participant attendees. Thank you so much for your time and for your joining us today. And so for this topic, social protection for moving migrants in conflict. So allow me to walk you through an overview of the current situation in Lebanon. Then on the later part, the ongoing efforts of the Philippine government in safeguarding the rights and well-being of Filipino migrants in this country. Social protection for migrating populations in Lebanon has becoming a critical issue, especially given the country's complex demographic and political landscape. Lebanon has long been a host to refugees and migrants, but the Syrian refugee crisis, which began in 2011, has only amplified these challenges. Lebanon's internal crisis, ranging from political paralysis and economic collapse to the after effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and the devastating Beirut blast or explosion in August 2020 have created a highly unstable environment. The ongoing financial crisis, now one of the worst globally since the mid-19th century, this has pushed out to approximately 80% of the Lebanese population into poverty, with widespread food insecurity and unemployment, yes. Amid these hardships, tensions have grown, particularly against migrant and refugee communities. And so as resources become increasingly scarce, many locals, the Lebanese, view migrants and refugees as competitors for jobs and essential services. This actually fueled a rise in xenophobia. This volatile climate reached a boiling point in April 2024 when widespread xenophobic violence erupted, accompanied by calls for and the implementation of forced returns of Syrians. Refugees now face heightened risks of detention, mass deportations, and violence as local populations become more protective of dwindling resources. And so, since October 2023, last year, conflict between the Hezbollah and Israel forces have further destabilized the region, escalating the conflict to unprecedented levels. This has created fear and uncertainty across Lebanon, which is now grappling with its largest displacement crisis in decades. The situation is dire, and the country's ability to manage this growing number of vulnerable people is increasingly in question. The rising tensions along the Israel-Lebanon border had already been observed since 2023, fueled by the regional dynamics such as the Israel's confrontations with Palestinian groups and the growing influence in supporting Hezbollah. And so Lebanon's prolonged political and economic turmoil has severely weakened the state's capacity to provide social protection for both Lebanese citizens and migrants. As the situation deteriorates, support for refugees and migrants have dwindled, making international organizations like UNHCR a crucial part to aid to those in need. My colleague will further discuss this topic later. And so for now, with those information that I have provided, brief information, allow me to share with you these videos, the daily heartaches and challenges we face here in Lebanon, where the constant, threat of bombings only adds to our ongoing struggles.
كاس قريبة سوبر قريبة
هلا كبيرة.
So now, you might be wondering, what measures is the Philippine government taking to ensure the safety and protection of Filipino migrants here in Lebanon? In light of the ongoing instability, the Philippine government has implemented a system of alert levels to guide the safety and evacuation of Filipinos in countries facing political instability, conflict, or natural disasters. These alert levels, issued by the Department of Foreign Affairs or DFA, are based on a comprehensive security assessment of the situation in each country. This system ensures that overseas Filipino workers or OFWs and other Filipino nationals are well informed and their safety is prioritized. The alert levels serve as a warning system to inform the public about potential threats in foreign countries and to implement appropriate protective measures, including mandatory or voluntary or mandatory repatriation and restrictions on travel. The alert levels range from alert level 1 to level 4, with alert level 4 as the highest alert level. And each level signify different levels of risks and corresponding measures. So we have here alert level 1, the precautionary phase, alert level 2, the restrictive phase, alert level 3, we have the voluntary repatriation phase, and the last one, and the alert level 4, the evacuation phase. Okay, so for each alert level, when we say alert level 1, there are already potential risks to the safety and security of Filipino nationals due to armed conflict, civil unrests, natural disasters, or serious threats in the area. But the situation has not yet escalated to the point of posing an imminent danger to life. So what are the actions being taken by the government? Filipinos are advised to exercise caution and avoid areas where there is escalating unrest or other forms of violence. Filipinos are also encouraged to stay informed about the situation and register with the Philippine Embassy or Consulate for safety updates. The Philippine government also monitors the situation, but no immediate evacuation or repatriation is planned at this stage. And then we have the alert level 3, or the restrictive phase, where the situation in the country has worsened and poses a serious threats to the safety and security of Filipino national. This includes civil unrests, protests, sporadic violence, or localized fighting. However, the situation does not yet involve widespread conflict or significant military action. So here, non-essential travel to affected areas is restricted or discouraged. Filipinos are encouraged to limit movement and avoid areas where fighting, protests, or instability are taking place. The Philippine government begins to facilitate voluntary repatriation for those who wish to return home, especially for those in areas at higher risks. And Filipinos are advised to stay in contact with the Philippine Embassy for safety information and consider returning if the situation is expected to worsen. And then the alert level 3, the voluntary repatriation phase. In the situation is significantly escalated and there is imminent danger at the safety and security of Filipino nationals. This phase is typically triggered by armed conflict, severe violence, widespread civil unrest, or natural disaster that put lives at risk. In this alert level, the alert level 3, voluntary repatriation is offered to Filipino nationals who wish to leave the country. The Philippine government provides assistance for repatriation, including financial support for travel and other logistic assistance. Filipinos in the affected area are strongly advised to leave if they feel their safety is compromised. Those who do not choose voluntary repatriation are urged to stay indoors and avoid high-risk areas until the situation stabilizes. And there's also, special measures that will be taken to assist migrant workers, including access to emergency shelters, legal support, and healthcare. And the last one, alert level 4, this is the evacuation phase already. This is where a severe and widespread conflict, or there's a life-threatening violence such as civil war, full-scale armed conflict, terrorist attack, or severe natural disasters that pose an extreme risks to the lives and safety of all civilians, including Filipino nationals. In this alert level 4, there's already mandatory evacuation. Mandatory evacuation is implemented for all Filipino nationals who remain in the affected area. All Filipinos are required to leave as soon as possible to protect their safety. So those are the alert levels. And for the alert level 4 also, the Philippine government, will organize evacuation flights to provide other means of transport to bring Filipino nationals back to the Philippines. All non-essential activities are being suspended at that time, and Filipino nationals who cannot live independently will receive priority assistance for evacuation. And then all the DFA, the Philippine embassies, the Department of Migrant Workers, or the Migrant Workers Office will coordinate evacuation efforts, provide shelter, and ensure that the repatriation process is carried out swiftly. So those are the the alert levels. And now the alert in Lebanon, the alert level 2 was actually raised by the Philippine government in 2016. This was due to the escalating security concerns arising from political instability and the threat of violence in the region. The situation in Lebanon at that time was tense due to the ongoing conflicts in the surrounding areas and internal instability. And under alert level 2, Filipinos are generally prohibited from entering Lebanon, except for those who already have existing employment contracts with authorized employers. And so that was in 2016. And in response to these escalating tensions, the Philippine government raised its alert level for Lebanon from alert level 2, the restriction phase, as what we have discussed earlier, to alert level 3, where there's already a voluntary repatriation phase in October 2023, initiating efforts to facilitate the safe return of Filipino nationals to the Philippines. And so, as update for the repatriation of our Philippine government, and as posted by the Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW, on its official Facebook page on November 8, 2024, we were able to send home 1,171 Filipinos from Lebanon. The repatriation is still ongoing, and we highly encourage those Filipino workers here or Filipino nationals who wish to go home to contact us at the Migrant Workers Office or the DMW or the Philippine Embassy to contact us so that we can facilitate their repatriation to the Philippines. In conclusion, while the situation in Lebanon remains challenging, the Philippine government remains vigilant and committed to ensuring the safety and well-being of Filipinos in the country. Together with international organizations and local communities, the government remained committed to finding solutions to safely repatriate our kababayans to the Philippines, ensuring their safe return and well-being in the face of the challenges they face abroad. And yeah, so that would be all for for this topic, and I hope you learn something from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jessa and Catherine, for that portion on social protection for moving migrants in conflict zones. Our learners will realize now that repatriation is not just the mere movement or transfer of our nationals from the country of destination to the Philippines. But along the process, we have to make sure that the rights are protected, travel documents are issued, and also they are provided with needs, their medicine, especially in the case of mother and children, as in the case of Philippine nationals who are not only temporary workers, but have also entered into mixed marriages with the local. So that becomes also a challenge for the Philippine government because generally the Philippine government will assist its nationals but will probably decide on humanitarian basis to help also local or other nationals. So this is the point of social protection in repatriation. Not only does the Philippine government move the nationals, but also make sure that they are protected, the rights are protected while traveling. And in some cases, there will be Filipino nationals who need to be repatriated because they are sick or probably pregnant at the height of the crisis. And this is where our next speaker will come in. Next slide, please. The card on Mr. Edwin Añoso, who is an officer at the Department of Health, who will discuss medical repatriation or cross-border collaboration to facilitate movement of migrants affected by conflict. Take away, Sir Edwin, please.
Yes, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone. I will be presenting to you the process of medical repatriation in the Philippines and its services through the Interagency Medical Repatriation Assistance Program, or the IMRAP. Next slide. There was an existing repatriation assistance in 2015, but health is not well emphasized. Thus, strengthening the assistance to be provided by the health sector led the development of the Joint Memorandum Circular entitled Integrated Policy Guidelines and Procedures in the Implementation of the Interagency Medical Repatriation Assistance Program, or the IMRAP. IMRAP is the established referral pathways for referring cases from the destination countries to the Philippines. This JMC aims to promote the health and safety of Filipino nationals and ensured a clear, effective response to cases requiring medical repatriation. So in the next slide, we will be presenting the definition of medical repatriation. So what is this medical repatriation? So this is the integrated assistance being provided by the Philippine government to overseas Filipinos returning home because of illness. Medical repatriation is not limited to physical health, but often involves addressing the psychological and emotional well-being of migrant workers. Mental health services, which are increasingly recognized as essential to the repatriation process, especially for workers who may have experienced trauma or abuse abroad. So what is the purpose of this medical repatriation in the next slide? The JMC has the ultimate goal of establishing the integrated system and process flow of coordination on medical repatriation among relevant government agencies and other stakeholders, which promote the health and safety of Filipino nationals abroad and ensure a clear, effective response to cases requiring medical repatriation. Through JMC, the following areas were improved. We have harmonization of policies, processes, and procedures of the various government agencies on medical repatriation. Now, we have a clear delineation of roles and responsibilities among government agencies, and we developed the standard reporting and monitoring system on which data are used for research and analysis. The next slide. Who are the main actors in the IMRAP? So each agency has a specific role to play in ensuring that the OFW receives timely and adequate medical assistance, safe transportation, and continued care upon the return to the Philippines. The goal is to provide the necessary support for the workers' recovery, welfare, and reintegration into the country. These relevant government agencies, plus in your screen, are instrumental in providing timely and well-coordinated assistance saves lives. And for the Department of Health, as the principle of universal healthcare, that no one will be left behind. Everyone, all Filipinos here and abroad will be provided with health services. In the next slide, this slide shows the process flow of coordination for medical repatriation. This outlines the steps to be followed, ensuring that repatriation cases are handled with due urgency and care. This eliminates bureaucratic delays and makes the process smoother for both the repatriates and the government agencies involved. I would like to emphasize that coordination of medical repatriation is start with the embassy or the foreign service post. If you can see in this screen that we have a labor attaché from the Philippine Overseas Labor Office. We have social welfare attaché from the Department of Social Welfare and Development. We have the attention to national from the Department of Foreign Affairs and the welfare officers from the Overseas Workers and Welfare Administration, where all medical repatriation cases are being referred first. That will eventually coordinate to the Department of Health and other member agencies for the specific assistance for repatriated overseas Filipinos. The next slide. So what are the IMRAP provides, or what are the services provided by the IMRAP? So airport assistance and initial medical assessment is being provided upon arrival at the airport by the Manila International Airport Authority and the Bureau of Quarantine for infectious diseases cases. They ensure that patients' medical conditions is stabilized before bringing his her to the receiving health facility or the place of residence. Ambulance conduction is also of the service, one of the services being provided by the MIA Medical Center, OWA, DOH, and the Department of the Interior and Local Government Emergency 911 in case needing to transport the patient to the LGU. The DOH Health Emergency Management Bureau handles and navigates the receiving health facility for a specific case. They have access to all hospitals in the Philippines nationwide. Relative to the patients, have the options to be endorsed to DOH non-health facilities if they preferred. Psychological services are provided by the Department of Health, National Center for Mental Health, and the Department of Social Welfare and Development. For financial assistance, we course through this through the Malasakit Center, a one-stop shop agencies which provide medical and financial assistance. And while medical escort is available upon request. Given the diversity of needs and the complexities of working abroad, a comprehensive approach to medical repatriation is essential to safeguarding the health and welfare of Filipino migrant workers. In the next slide, who can avail this IMRAP? So the IMRAP is for all overseas Filipinos who needs to be repatriated to the Philippines for further medical care or attention. Depending on the nature of gravity of the medical condition, may require him/her to be accompanied by the medical professional depending on the circumstances. Has been cleared to travel by the attending physician from the country of origin. And of course, we need the proper documents from the host country because this is important document that the receiving health facility may be needed. The next slide. How do I avail the IMRAP? These are the requirements for availing the IMRAP services. Medical records are important for the health facility and the attending physician in the Philippines because they have to assess these medical records of the patient to see the real medical state of the patient if they are safe to be transported to the Philippines. Clearance to travel by the attending physician because a certificate of fit to travel clearance is needed. We have the exit visa from the host country. flight booking because this is important upon arrival, so we know what assistance will be provided during the arrival of these overseas Filipinos, as well as other medical records like mga laboratories. The government agency in the Philippines who receive the request will be contacting the overseas Filipinos or the next of kin for coordination and facilitation of the needs. The next slide. These are the services provided to overseas Filipinos from Lebanon. We deploy DOH medical team including psychiatrists, pediatrician, and general practitioners to conduct initial physical and mental assessment upon arrival at the airport. Coordination and referral to hospitals will be facilitated as needed. Medical transport will also be provided. The DOH National Patient and Navigation and Referral Center, or the NPNRC, has the 24/7 hotlines, which are available also. Consultation and admission to our hospital are prioritized, and medical financial assistance shall be coursed through the Malasakit Center. Currently, we have 166 Malasakit centers in the DOH hospitals in the Philippines nationwide, including state-run hospitals and regional medical centers. Their dependents are also endorsed to the DOH hospital for evaluation, treatment, and management. The next slide. There are also other assistance provided by the government agencies such as the Department of Migrant Workers and other government agencies involved in the repatriation process. Next slide. And this ends my presentation, and thank you for listening. These are the contact details and the email address where you can send your referral cases. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Edwin, for that very informative presentation on medical repatriation. If you will recall, in 2020 until maybe 2022, at the height of the COVID pandemic, the medical repatriation of the Department of Health, the Bureau of Quarantine, have been really helpful, especially when COVID broke out in Tokyo. I was there, and I think I recall Mr. Edwin was one of the DOH personnel who was sent to Tokyo to assess what are the needs to be given to our Filipino nationals, because the crew of the cruise ship that was afflicted by the virus are mostly Filipinos. There were about 800 of them, and many have stayed in Tokyo in different hospitals for the quarantine period until they were permitted to leave Japan. Of course, in the case of Lebanon, we may focus on a different aspect of medical practice that would be psychosocial or other counseling measures, considering the trauma that our nationals and probably their children who are exposed to bombing. While there is no ground war in Lebanon, what is difficult is that there is only the missile attack, and sometimes collateral damage can happen. And in the course of such bombing, our nationals are most likely to suffer trauma. So how are we learners moving along? Kindly keep your questions in mind before we go to the third topic, the last of our presentation on strategic tools and recommendations, to be presented by Ms. Joy Eva Bohol of the United Methodist Committee on Relief based in Geneva. Ms. Joy, please.
Thank you so much, everyone, and also for everyone's participation so far in this very timely topic that we're trying to really lift up and share this information to our audience as well. I'm Joy Eva Bohal, and I am from the United Methodist Committee on Relief. This is the humanitarian relief and development arm of the United Methodist Church. And we also work alongside different partners around the world in different regions around the world. And for my role, I am based in Switzerland as a regional migration specialist for Europe. And what I'm sharing with you before we go to explore strategic tools and recommendations, I think it is also very important to look into with all of this with efforts on repatriation, I think it is also very important to look at other actors that are crucial and have key roles in ensuring human dignity and rights are upheld in terms of repatriation. In war-torn countries, civil society organizations and faith-based organizations play vital roles in ensuring that repatriation processes are safe, dignified, and sustainable. These organizations provide essential support to individuals and families returning to their home regions, often acting as intermediaries between returnees and local communities. Their role includes, first, advocacy and information dissemination. Civil society organizations and faith-based organizations advocate for displaced persons' rights, working to ensure that individuals have a choice to return voluntarily and are informed about conditions in their home regions. They also help displaced populations understand the realities of repatriation, providing them with accurate, reliable information, which is crucial in enabling informed decision-making for returnees. They also provide the provision of essential services. These organizations offer crucial services, including temporary shelters, healthcare, education, and psychosocial support. These services help people reintegrate, making the transition smoother and addressing immediate needs that may arise upon return as well. Specialized support for vulnerable groups such as children, the elderly, and those with disabilities is also a key focus, ensuring that all individuals receive adequate assistance. Community reconciliation and peace building. Faith-based organizations are particularly engaged in peace building and reconciliation efforts that foster social cohesion. They work to bridge divides and promote unity, especially in areas where tensions may still exist due to conflict. Through dialogue and community building activities, these organizations help prevent future conflicts and build trust among communities, thereby promoting sustainable reintegration for returnees. And in my experience in the region here in Europe, for example, with the ongoing conflict happening in Ukraine, we also observed that in many cases, in many places where international organizations are not present, or maybe also some of the government offices are not present, most often faith-based institutions and churches or faith-based related communities are present, and people trust these communities to be able to get the services and also the protection that they need. And in that way, this shows that working with CSOs and faith-based organizations are crucial in reaching out these communities and also building trust and relationship in these communities, where people also put their trust and feel safe in terms of their situation during the conflict. Next slide, please. It is also very important to see the collaboration, the impacts of these collaborations, where like the IOM, or the International Organization for Migration, and the UNHCR, the Refugee Agency of the UN, recognize the importance of engaging CSOs and FBOs in repatriation efforts. Some of the key points are, first, complementary expertise and local knowledge. As I shared earlier, CSOs and FBOs often have deep-rooted connections within local communities and possess invaluable cultural and contextual knowledge. This local expertise enables them to address unique community needs and foster acceptance of returnees, especially in regions that may have experienced intergroup conflicts. Also, international organizations and even UN bodies also encourage these organizations to work alongside international actors to leverage their community trust and local networks, which can lead to smoother repatriation and also helping on reintegration with other partners in the country of origins. Next is building trust in repatriation processes. The involvement of trusted local organizations enhances the credibility of repatriation efforts. When return programs include respected CSOs and FBOs, displaced individuals are more likely to view the process as safe and legitimate, increasing their willingness to participate. This partnership approach helps counter misinformation and builds confidence among displaced persons considering return. In fact, in many places that we also work, the UMCOR works in different regions around the world, it is also very important that when we work with local partners, our local partners are also involved in the different roundtables that involves different partners and international organizations and also state offices or state institutions to ensure that there is a really smooth process and multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder approach in dealing or addressing issues like repatriation and reintegration, as well as they process the returns and ensuring that the social protection continues until these migrants and even refugees have safe reintegration as well when they go back to their countries. And next is promoting sustainable reintegration. For repatriation to be successful, it must not only focus on the physical return of displaced persons, but also on creating conducive environments for their long-term reintegration. So civil society organizations and faith-based organizations contribute by addressing social, economic, and psychological aspects of reintegration. They provide livelihood support, skills training, and community building initiatives, which are essential in establishing a sense of normalcy and stability for returnees and preventing cycles of displacement. So in the case of the Philippines, the National Council of Churches in the Philippines, for example, have programs that really helps on with their networks abroad as well. They are part of a network of receiving returnees and helping them with other reintegration activities as they go back to the Philippines. And this is the part of the church, for example, and the faith-based organizations that they're also in helping and then providing these opportunities and providing also other holistic activities for people to feel safe and to feel also welcomed back or reintegrated back to their country of origin. Next slide, please. And now we go to the strategic tools and recommendation. I'm sure many of us here in this webinar may be familiar with these different objectives. So this is the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. And why is it important to just look into this again? Well, the Global Compact for Migration is the first ever intergovernmentally negotiated UN agreement on a common approach to managing international migration. And although these are not legally binding, this platform or this framework, the GCM's guiding principles, objectives, and actions find their root in established obligations and principles underpinned by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and international law. And I think this is a very good framework where intergovernmental agencies, of course, different governments come together, different states, as well as different actors. So the CSOs, the private sectors are all included in this platform. And I think what's also very important is that refugees themselves and migrants ourselves are also represented in this platform as consultants in the different parts of the negotiations and the policy, the negotiations and the different discussion on how to effectively govern migration in a multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder approach. And as you see here, I'm just noting a few of the 23 different objectives of the GCM. As you can see, the regular pathways, that reduce vulnerabilities, counter smuggling. Counter smuggling, just very quickly, in the experience, for example, in the Ukraine conflict, a lot of the third country nationals were not able to be, were not repatriated immediately after the aggression of Russia to Ukraine in March 2022. They were not prioritized. A lot of them are from South Asia and also Africa. And so some of them, because they were fearing for their lives and there was no clear repatriation plan for them, some of them resorted into paying smugglers to actually help them leave Ukraine and go to another country. So in repatriation efforts, we have to make sure, working with a multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder approach, this is very important to also counter on smuggling, because it can be the option for some people, especially, for example, third country nationals, where there's no proper repatriation plan or strategy from their governments during an escalation of war or conflict. Another one is eradicate trafficking. Again, they are also these people who are in conflict, migrants in conflict, and even refugees, as Lebanon is also hosting a lot of Syrian refugees. There is also a possibility that these are people who are vulnerable for trafficking. So there is, so it is very important to look into this as well when we try to apply or to plan for repatriation. And we've heard some of these good practices that are already being done in Lebanon at the moment from our colleague earlier. Then migrant and diaspora contributions. We have to ensure that when we create strategies and recommendations, that the voices of migrants themselves, or ourselves, as I am also a migrant here in Switzerland, the migrants' voices should also be at the center of the table for decision making. In the UN, they say, there's this slogan that nothing about us without us. There is migrants themselves. If we use we need to use their agency to also help and contribute to repatriation plans and from their perspective as well. So it is very important that the migrant and the diaspora in wherever country or that is in conflict, that we're working on repatriation, that their voices are heard, their perspectives are heard, and that their needs are also heard. Put them as well in the decision-making table as you plan ahead on repatriation and also in the process of reintegration. International cooperation. Again, we cannot work in silos, and not a single government have a cookie cutter effective migration plan that could govern everyone's migration challenges. So it is very important to work, for example, with IOM, within IOM, the International Organization for Migration. They have a lot of programs that are actually dealing with this, repatriation programs, and even those who are still in the country of conflict, they already have a lot of partnerships with local organizations that will assist migrants and refugees as well in the process of repatriation. So it is international cooperation also includes the different bilateral agreements with the different countries. So for example, in the because I'm working in the region, so I'm speaking more on the relationship and the experience from Ukraine. For example, some of the third country nationals in Ukraine were repatriated in the Netherlands and other countries also in Europe. Most of them are South Asians and also from Africa who were students and who have also resident permits in the residence permits in Ukraine at the time of the aggression of Russia to Ukraine, and then they were repatriated. So there was an international collaboration for other countries receiving third country nationals to also be repatriated in those areas because of their vulnerability. So it is very important that we have these different approaches and more actors are involved because there are cases where, for example, some of the South Asians and Africans could not return immediately to their countries. So they had to be repatriated out of the conflict zone. And some countries have this collaboration or sharing of the burden to actually receive them for the meantime as they also process their returns to their countries. Then we have the dignified return and reintegration. Again, we have the Global Compact for Migration is really rooted into the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, and international law, putting people at the heart and the welfare and dignity of people at the center of the process of this strategy in repatriation. And finally, social protection, which was already shared by other colleagues earlier. Next slide, please. And then again, we go to the GCM guiding principles, people-centered. Again, it's just also kind of re-emphasizing again the need to have a whole of society approach and putting people at the center of the strategy. So we look into the gender as well, as we know that more than 50% of the migrants and refugees around the world are women and girls, and they are the most vulnerable population as well when it comes to in migration in general. So it has to also be gender responsive in that sense. There's also child sensitivity. A lot of minors are also vulnerable, and some of the different strategies normally also leave behind approaches on how to take care of this of children or minors that are moving. And then also looking at the sustainable development goals and how this approach would really also be beneficial for everyone and also for all the sectors and the stakeholders. So these are just kind of the principles that are really also re-emphasizing and reiterate re-emphasizing the different roles and the different the emphasis of the approach that we have to do as different parts of the sectors and communities as well. Next slide, please. So this time, I'm gonna request Sir Edwin, my colleague Edwin, to share also how do we see it, the strategies and recommendations moving forward in terms of the medical repatriation.
Thank you, Ma'am Joy. Since the Joint Memorandum Circular on Medical Repatriation was issued in 2017, some provisions of this policy are no longer applicable to the current situation. Thus, we need to revisit the existing policy on medical repatriation. And due to the creation of the new executive department, the Department of Migrant Workers, some of the implementing partners and their functions were subsumed to the DMW. Revisiting the policy will improve coordination and comprehensively and timely medical assistance for Filipino workers, improving their overall welfare and health outcomes. Further, the current best practices addresses new health threats and incorporates lessons learned from past experience will also be reflected in this new JMC. And of course, we have to strengthen the navigation and referral system through coordination with the Center for Health Developments or the DOH regional offices, national patient navigation referral units, public, public and private institutions, and local government units. And that's the ways forward for the joint memorandum circular.
Thank you. And then another also way to look into, again, based on the different, based on the GCM principles and objectives, another way to look into the recommendations and strategic tools is to strengthen, really, to strengthen multi-stakeholder and multi-sectoral repatriation strategy framework. We will see it as pre-return phase, return phase, reintegration phase, and monitoring and evaluation phase. For the pre-return phase, it is the objective to ensure conditions are suitable for safe, informed, and voluntary repatriation. Stakeholders involved would be the different UN bodies, like the IOM and the Refugee Agency, UNHCR. They could conduct risk assessment, provide information on safety and conditions in the country of return, and liaise with local governments. National governments could also develop policies that guarantee the rights of returning individuals and coordinate with regional authorities. Civil societies and faith-based organizations can engage with displaced communities to assess willingness to return, provide psychosocial support, and address safety concerns. Private sectors could also partner to ensure communication infrastructure for information dissemination and plan logistics for transportation back to the regions. Some of these activities could be regularly monitor conflict zones and assess security, political stability, and availability of basic services, information campaigns, and return preparation services. For return phase, the objective is to facilitate a safe, orderly, and dignified repatriation journey. The international organizations could manage logistics, secure funding, and coordinate the movement with local actors. National governments can ensure border procedures are smooth, provide amnesty if needed, and oversee customs processes. CSOs and FBOs can offer in-transit support, including medical and psychosocial care, provide culturally sensitive guidance and emotional support. While the private sector, like transportation and communication, could offer transport resources and services, ensuring all travelers are tracked and remain safe. Some key activities could include logistical coordination by land, sea, or air, and establish safe transit points and secure borders, medical and psychological support on-site, immediate health needs to support trauma, family reunification, as well as legal and security checks, like verification of documentation and securing entry permissions in coordination with border control authorities. For the reintegration phase, an objective could be to establish sustainable conditions for social, economic, and psychological reintegration in the country of origin. The international organizations could provide funding and technical support for community rehabilitation, infrastructure, and economic initiatives. National governments could set up reintegration policies, develop public services like health and education, and establish land property rights for returnees. CSO and FBOs could facilitate access to social services, offer community integration programs, and support reconciliation efforts to reduce intergroup tensions. And private sectors like the job creation and education could support job placement programs, create vocational training opportunities, and invest in social infrastructure. And for the monitoring and evaluation phase, the objective could be to continuously assess the effectiveness, safety, and sustainability of repatriation efforts, adjusting as needed. So stakeholders' involvement could be international organizations could lead data collection on returnees, well-being, track economic and social reintegration outcomes, and share insights for policy adjustment. National governments could monitor program implementation, enforce policies, and address gaps in services. Civil societies and faith-based organizations could gather community-level feedback, identify challenges, and adjust local support efforts. And for the academe and the research institutions, conduct independent evaluations, providing data-driven insights for policy refinement. And finally, next slide, please. So before that, cross-sector collaboration and coordination mechanisms, joint task forces, regular stakeholder meetings, and shared data systems. These are also very important as we try to really accommodate and ensure safety and dignity for all migrants and even refugees as they also repatriate and ensure that the process doesn't stop at the repatriation, but also continues during transit and also reintegration back to their countries. So these are some of the strategic tools. I know this is only a few for given the complexity of the issue on migration and repatriation, but these are some of the thoughts and things that we could reflect on and also challenge ourselves on how we can take part in the different sectors we represent. How can we contribute to ensuring a holistic, multi-stakeholder and multi-sectoral approach in serving and also in addressing repatriation for migrants in conflict zones. So thank you, and I'll give the floor back to our moderator, Sir Salang.
Thank you, Ms. Joy. And of course, can we give a thumbs up to our researchers and speakers from Group 1, from our co-learners? A little thumbs up. And I hope you are still awake after those insightful presentations. But can we invite comments for one or two strategic tools? Otherwise, we can open the floor to the question and answer portion. And I request the participation of the group. If we can answer these 5 questions, I'd like to read, but I'd like to start from, I'd like to invite Sir Edwin. If you can answer, please. There is one question on somebody who is in the hospital in Singapore. Where is that? I cannot find it anymore. Anyway, let's start from the top. My question is related to the level or the alert level, levels 1 to 4 of repatriation. I'd like to ask if it is necessary that we wait up to level 4 to have mandatory repatriation of OFW. Would it be too late by then? My colleagues from the DMW or from the other government officers, you may feel free to answer so that we can answer the question of our attendees. Kindly open your mic so you can answer. Do we really have to wait for level 4? Or there's no need for level 4? On the first sign of trouble, level 3, our workers, our nationals, can opt to be repatriated. But remember, some challenges are there. Some of our nationals have entered into mixed marriages and they already have children, they have investments, they have property in the host country, in this case, Lebanon. So sometimes it takes a little more time for them to decide. But I don't think that there is really a need to go to level 4. If they can take the first opportunity to leave, level 2 or even level 3, then take that opportunity to leave. Okay? There is also another question. As we all know, we have those Filipino nationals or OFWs who are easily tempted to work in Lebanon, regardless of the alert level the Philippine Embassy imposes. Also, we all know that there are Filipino nationals that are for tourism purposes only in a certain country, but decided to go to Lebanon for work because of what they call opportunity. My question is there any way we can prevent this OFW Filipino nationals who jump from one country to Lebanon for work? My colleagues in the department can probably answer this. Third country recruitment, who can answer, can help me please. Okay, for third country recruitment, it is really frowned upon by our government because when a national goes to country B and decides to travel from country B to say, as you say, Lebanon or country C, we have no more control with the border inspection. So long as they have the visa, they can go from country B to, in this case, Lebanon. So it is very difficult. That is why the department always issues advisory so that our nationals are apprised of the dangers and risks of going through third country recruitment. Of course, it's a different situation when a Filipino national travels with the employer to country C. Or for example, from the Middle East, the employer is Lebanese and the Lebanese employer wants to return to the country, Lebanon, then the worker, who probably is a domestic worker, sometimes would have no choice but to go with the employer. So that is also a different situation. Okay? There is another question on artificial intelligence and digital technology to enhance repatriation programs or migrants and their families. Anyone from the group to help me answer, please? Would you know if AI or digital technology, perhaps the mapping of our nationals can be helped by AI and digital technology? Are you aware that when you are traveling overseas, you are supposed to register in the Philippine Embassy nearest to the place where you are? So if the embassies or the migrant workers offices can tap AI, then they can track where our workers are, or probably tourists, if they are tourists in the case of embassy for non-workers. For MWOs, it will have to be the workers. They should monitor where the workers are. Okay.
I can also add,
Okay.
sir, yes, actually for the AI, for example, in Europe, I was last month I was able to observe a meeting on migration, the Committee of Migration with the Parliamentary of Assembly at the Council of Europe. And one of the discussion was actually an AI. And there's a university and startup company in the UK that is actually creating a AI for good tools that's helping on bilateral that will assist on bilateral agreements in terms of migrants moving, right? And then as much as possible, they're trying to make sure that it's not homophobic, not racist, and this is really inputting, and this requires collaboration by countries of origin, countries in transit, and countries of destination. So again, going back to like making sure that all these areas, the countries of origin, country of transit, and country of destination are collaborating together to get the information, the screening, the border management in a way that is helping governments and also different sectors to know where people are moving and how to help them, and including also their vulnerabilities. And I think this is something that, for example, in Europe, the Council of Europe is looking into, and making sure that migrants themselves are included in inputting the data. Because again, if the migrants, migrants in general are not included in data inputs, this could be racist. The AI could be used as a tool to work on returning or actually sending people to third country, to safe third country areas, which are not necessarily safe. So I think there are efforts that are doing that. I'm not, and this requires collaboration with different governments in different stages of migration. So that's one thing. I'm not sure about the Philippine per se, but I think that's one. But the challenge though is for also irregular migrations or the irregular migrants. How do we also look into that, right? Like if you are not registered or you're not, your data is not included, how can we, or how can governments, or how can different sectors actually assist assist the person in terms of the different movements? So that's also something to look into. But at least from the border management side in Europe, specifically, there's already some moves on making sure that AI is used for good. But this again requires different sectors and different countries working together to assist people or migrants on the move, especially those vulnerable migrants on the move.
Thank you, Ms. Joy. We go to another question. What kind of support are provided by the government and other sectors to families of migrants in their country of origin? Is the question related to what the Philippine government gives to repatriate? So OWA sends help. They have the integration programs as well, and immediate cash assistance, and of course scholarships for children of OFW. But there may be issues there with respect to whether active or no longer active. So the DMW covers when the returning national is not an active OWA member or never been an OWA member. So we have the Action Fund that provides financial assistance, livelihood assistance, and of course TESDA also offers training program for returning nationals. Okay, and there is another question on what point is assistance extended to repatriate? Up to what level, perhaps? should the government help the repatriate? Should repatriate want to return to the host country despite the risk? How does the government deal with these cases? Lastly, for OFW repatriate, does the government provide assistance if they want to seek employment in different countries? Of course, coming from, in this case, Lebanon, returning to Lebanon at this stage would be risky, except, of course, if they have families back in Lebanon who can also help them return and they have the visa, then the government can really not prevent them from going there because that decision is based on family ties. What about if they want to seek employment in different countries? Of course, as they always say, you can always go to the DFW, check your skills, and then apply to the different agencies which offer these accredited job orders, and then hopefully find the job that is suited to your qualification. Okay? From Ralph Julius Mendoza on social protection for moving migrants in conflict zones. What strategies have been most effective in providing healthcare support to migrants in conflict zones, and how can this be adapted for healthcare institutions like OFW Hospital to better serve returning overseas workers facing similar vulnerability? Perhaps Sir Edwin can help me with this. This is a matter for the Department of Health, sir.
Yes, the best strategies that we can do since overseas Filipinos cannot go out the place because of the conflict or war, we can provide this the teleconsult or the telemedicines. Um, that's the strategies that we can do for overseas Filipinos needing healthcare and medical support.
Okay. So I hope that answers question, Sir Ralph. And there is another question from an anonymous attendee. What if a Filipino national who is not registered in the Philippine Embassy as OFW then eventually has a medical condition? Is the Filipino national available, or can he avail of medical repatriation? And can that Filipino national avail of the financial assistance from any government agency? To answer the question, if a Filipino national who entered a third country or another country without going through the regular process as an OFW, meaning we cannot find in the database of the DMW or OWA any OFW information. What is important is that the law, Republic Act 11641, requires proof of work. So, the Filipino national who wants to avail of medical repatriation should at least be able to show that he was working in the country of destination. Because we have so many cases of Filipinos who either go to Europe or even in the Pacific as tourists, eventually finding work, and they are not in the system either because from the time they went to the host country, they have not returned to the Philippines, so they have not their contract verified, so they are called balik manggagawa or returning workers. So they are not yet in the system. But if they are able to present proof of work, what are those? Payment of salary, if they can show a payroll, company ID, maybe pay slip or certificate of employment, and they are sick, then they can always go to any MWO near the place of work or in the country of destination and seek medical assistance, whether repatriation or medical assistance in the host country. Okay, I hope I have answered the question. We have many cases of Filipinos who get sick while overseas and they have no insurance. So our government, through the Action Fund of the Department of Migrant Workers, is always ready to help. Okay?
But
Any
I would
other
like to
questions? Okay, sir, please.
I would like to add that Filipino nationals can also avail the financial assistance from the Department of Health through the Medical Assistance for Indigent program or the MAIP, because all Filipinos are can avail this program or the financial assistance based on the administrative order number 2020-0060 for indigent
Okay.
patients. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Edwin. I think there are no more questions in the, I think it's in the chat box. What about from our learners? Do you have other questions? No more questions from our learners?
There is a
Miss
hand
Pablo.
raised. There's a
Yes.
hand raised, Sir Salanga,
Miss
Jessie
Pablo is
Fab.
raising her hand, please. Kindly open your mic and mute yourself, please. Miss Pablo.
Hi, good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you. Please go ahead.
I just would like to add, just recently, yesterday, I'm meeting with the Secretary of the Department of Migrant Workers, um, giving us instructions for the one repatriation command center that the team should not only focus on a certain country, but although right now the trend is that we are repatriating the voluntaries, the voluntary repatriates from Lebanon, Israel. Um, it's good to use the action fund for the benefits of the repatriates. So yesterday, the discussion was that uh, the action fund against the repatriates. So were we able to use the action fund against the repatriates? So how many were able to be repatriated already? And how is the action fund? Is it already used? Or are the repatriates not able to benefit the fund? So that's why the secretary of the department instructed us to at least give all our best to help the Filipino nationals outside the country. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Jessie. Any other question from the other learners before we proceed to the takeaways from our webinar today? Any other input? Oh, there's another in the chat box. Okay, I will read it. A good number of Filipinos opt to remain in Lebanon as a matter of socioeconomic choice and family-related reasons. How are they provided assistance given that they decline repatriation? Also, assistance has to be sustainable and not just in the form of a temporary financial assistance. Such assistance only encourages them to stay on and be exposed to danger. Any other answers from my colleagues in the department? Mr. Bernard, did you have any idea how to help the Filipinos to decide to stay in Lebanon rather than return to the Philippines, either because for socio-economic reasons or family-related reasons? Generally, financial assistance is extended for those who are returning to the Philippines. But for those who decide to stay, I have no idea whether MWOs are authorized also to disperse the action fund if Filipino nationals decide to stay in a crisis situation, or in this case, Lebanon. But I believe maybe the Department of Foreign Affairs under the Undersecretary for Migrant Workers or Undersecretary for Migrant Filipinos can also give help. But of course, you are right in saying it's not good to merely give financial assistance, as they will only restore to itself. It's like a dole-out program. We need something that is sustainable, but in a crisis situation like Lebanon, the currency or the exchange is fluctuating. It's very difficult. I think it's even difficult to withdraw your dollars from Lebanon, or probably remit money from Lebanon. So the black market is thriving. But anyhow, I am sure that the government still gives help in any form for those who decide to stay in Lebanon, whether for socioeconomic reasons, meaning they have work, they have livelihood in Lebanon, or because of family ties. Thank you. I hope I have been able to answer the question. From the learners,
Yeah,
would you have
uh,
other?
Just to answer to the, I mean, to respond, to try to respond to this question. I mean, I think this is also where, we go beyond the government as well. This is where it is very important to look into the multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder approach. As I mentioned, there are several organizations. Even IOM has also livelihood programs, as shared by one of our colleagues working with IOM actually, but he's not able to join us in this webinar. He did mention that IOM has livelihood programs for those vulnerable population in Lebanon, for example. So vulnerable population include the migrants as well, and the refugees, the Syrian refugees that are also in Lebanon, and even the vulnerable population who are Lebanese. And these are some of the programs and projects that are available. Different non-governmental organizations or CSOs and FBOs are also offering different services. We actually have a partner called the International Orthodox Christian Churches, Christian charities that is present in Lebanon, and they serve the vulnerable population in Lebanon, and this includes the migrants as well. And they have different programs. They have also different activities that serve this vulnerable. So we could, we could share some information with you on that. But there are these Filipinos, who can seek support also beyond the government support if they decide to stay there. There are agencies, there are organizations that are already working to serve the vulnerable populations in that area. And this is not only in Lebanon, but in different conflict-related places. So, for example, in Ukraine, we work with in Ukraine, and we have a lot of implementing partners working in Ukraine for those Ukrainians who decide to stay actually in Ukraine, and other nationals who are there. We have projects to help them, in a sustainable way, together with the local government, together with international or agencies of the UN as well. So there, we have to look at it in a holistic and multi stakeholder approach way to address this. So not only in the government, but also other actors that are present in that community.
Thank you, Ms. Joy, for those inputs. I think there are no more questions from the learners and from the other attendees. So we can probably go to the takeaways. Just this moment, I think of two major takeaways. Repatriation is not just government effort, but it also involves the many other sectors like faith-based faith-based organizations, civil society organizations, non-government organizations, UN bodies, even the host countries, because they give the visa, they even waive the levies or the penalties for overstaying. And number two, repatriation is not just about return, but the government, the other sectors must also consider plans on how those returnees can start all over again. And possibly, when peace returns, they can go back to that country if so they decide. Anyway, I have written down some takeaways from the Lebanon experience or in general. The Philippine Embassy and the migrant workers offices must always review its contingency plan for repatriation and be on the lookout for signs of the host country's security status within and without. The identification of the route, the kind of transportation on sea, land, air, as in the case of Lebanon, mass repatriation can be carried out on these modes of transportation. International organizations such as the IOM, Red Cross, UNCHR, churches, and similar bodies involved with migrants must also be tapped, considering their experience in such situations, and of course, ensure the safe passage of our nationals. The registration and open line of communication, either through social media, mobile communications with the Filipino community, must be kept and identify the areas where they are usually concentrated for ease of mastering and the sign of trouble. Water, items with longer shelf life, blankets, medicine, mother and child needs, and their sources must be identified. All this in preparation for eventual repatriation. Those married to locals, a plan must also be prepared for them, as generally there is a tendency to hesitate to go having built their home and apprehension of displacement in the home country. If their family is going to the Philippines, when they get back to the Philippines, there is the issue of work or how to sustain themselves, or whether they will eventually return to Lebanon or any country for that matter once the situation is stabilizing. The Philippine government must maintain a ready pool of rapid reaction teams or identify nearby countries with Philippine embassies or migrant workers offices who can immediately deploy not only personnel but must have ready funds, as the escalation of conflict means increasing cost of shelter, food, and mass transportation. These rapid reaction teams must also include EMTs or personnel trained to handle and assist those with special medical needs so that they are able to assist properly. There will always be flashpoints in many parts of the world, either due to security, natural calamities, disease as demonstrated by the pandemic, and our government must be ready to assist in keeping safe our nationals who in time of relative peace support the Philippine economy. Hence, it is imperative to help them as well in times of trouble. Finally, repatriation does not end in simply bringing our nationals safely home. Our government must also prepare reintegration measures, whether in the short or long term, as our displaced nationals must have something to sustain themselves once in the Philippines. These reintegration measures, we defer to the next group as they present the second learner-led webinar as a culmination of the UPCPAL course on global migration. We hope to have presented the experiences and the lessons from the Lebanon experience, as well as the other examples in other parts of the world. Salamat and magandang araw po saan man kayo sa panig ng mundo. Thank you. Miss Elora, please.